What's up guys? Today I'm going to show you the fastest build in the game, the Shred Werewolf. This build is focused around the Primal Shred upgrade. What this does, it allows you to essentially teleport to mobs every time you click Shred. The way Shred works is whenever you use the first attack, it costs spirit, but then in a short amount of time, you're able to use 2 follow-up attacks that do not cost any spirit whatsoever. There are 2 uniques in this build, but neither of them are actually required for you to play the build. Later on, I'll show you how to start with the build and then how to transition into this final form of the build. As we're dashing around, we're taking advantage of the unique Waxing Gibbous. This makes it so that whenever we kill a monster, for the next 2.5 seconds, we have a 100% crit chance on all our werewolf skills. You can see the idea is to find a weak mob, kill them, then dive into the pack of really strong monsters so that you can take advantage of the really high crit chance. This also works in conjunction with the Tempest Roar helmet. This gives us access to abilities like Storm Strike, Cyclone Armor, and more importantly, Hurricane. The reason that Hurricane is so good in this build is because it combos with the Waxing Gibbous, making it so that our Hurricane has a 100% crit chance as well during this time. Crit is very important in this build because Hurricane will apply the damage reduction, but then it can also take advantage of our Spirit Boon, Masochistic. So even if you get crowd controlled in this build, which you won't be because of Direwolf, you have Hurricane ticking around you and hitting monsters, and every single time it crits, it heals you. We're using Direwolf, as I mentioned, in this build, which means we have very, very low spirit cost on Shred, and it already doesn't consume much spirit, as you can see. It gives us a lot of movement speed too. We're able to reach the movement speed cap with this on our amulet or even on our rings. The way we're able to AoE clear with this is taking advantage of the Stormclaw aspect. The way this works is anytime we crit, we do a small AoE lightning around the target. And the way we really take advantage of this, once again, with the Waxing Gibbous. The combination of taking out a first monster to gain the crit chance and then diving into the pack of monsters allows us to hit all the monsters and create an AoE in the middle of them. And then if we can hit multiple monsters with Shred, you can create an AoE overlap. This build also is pretty good at bossing. If you can set up a bunch of crits before you move into the boss room, you can instantly delete bosses. First, let's go over the skills. I'm going to show you the final version of the build first, and then afterwards I have another build that before you get the uniques, you can play until you get them. The uniques just enhance the build. They don't really make anything required. It does allow us to use storm skills in Direwolf form with Tempest Roar, but I have another version of the build that works before that. And you can still use the Waxing Gibbous if you get that first. You can level as this build. It's not bad. Shred's okay. I think there's better AoE skills, but this was okay. So we start out with Storm Strike. This is good for a lot of reasons. You'll see this in a lot of my builds. It gives you damage reduction as a melee character. Damage reduction is very, very nice because you have to dive into the monsters. And then the upgrade path gives us the ability to apply vulnerable. You'll see we have the exploit glyph, which allows us to apply vulnerable on monsters for the first 3 seconds we fight them. So we don't actually need to use this when fighting AoE monsters. This will be helpful for bosses whenever they last longer than 3 seconds or when you're fighting harder content. But again, the damage reduction is really nice. Moving on down here, we have Shred upgraded, of course, and then we have Enhanced Shred. Shred gains 30% attack speed. This makes it feel really, really good, and heals for 1% of your life if an enemy is struck. So it's a nice little bit of self-healing, but we have a lot of self-healing in the build. Primal Shred, Shred's second and third attack also perform a dash. In addition, Shred's critical strike damage is increased by 20%. This is the main point of the build. This allows us on all 3 attacks of Shred to teleport instantly to the mobs pretty much as you want. The critical strike damage bonus is also really, really nice. Because of Waxing Gibbous giving us 100% crit chance, we focus a lot on critical strike damage through Rampaging in Direwolf. We have 3 points in Predatory Instinct for the close crit. Sometimes you won't have Waxing Gibbous up because you're fighting a boss or you need to get that first kill. So we still will be going for crit, even though we do have a 100% crit chance a lot of the time. Getting that first kill is really, really important. You don't want to fall behind. 3 points into Digitigrade Gate, or 9% move speed. Again, I told you guys we hit the movement speed cap with this build, so this helps with that. 1 point into Heart of the Wild, and then Wild Impulses, you see that there's really no spirit issues, so the downside of the more spirit cost really does not affect Shred at all, and this is pretty much just a damage increase. Again, once we have Tempest Roar, we're able to take advantage of Cyclone Armor, and then upgrade into Preserving Cyclone Armor. This is just great for melee characters that have to dive in. Constant damage reduction is really, really important. We have Blood Howl, which feels amazing in the build. Because of the upgrade, whenever you get a kill, it reduces the cooldown of Blood Howl by 1 second, allowing you to essentially spam Blood Howl. And the reason you want to do that is because of this upgrade, Blood Howl also increases your attack speed by 15% for 4 seconds. If you notice you're having some spirit issues though, don't be afraid to take innate Blood Howl until you have less spirit issues. This will help you out a lot with that. The other reason we want to spam Blood Howl is for Vigilance. 15% damage reduction for 6 seconds after using a defensive skill. We can pretty much keep this up 100% of the time when fighting monsters because we're constantly killing. So this is a really good combination, and I like this on a lot of my builds. Moving down here, you'll notice as a werewolf build, unfortunately, there's really not a lot of options in the skill tree. You can see I have these storm skills because there's just nothing really to pick for a pure werewolf build, which feels kind of bad. I put 1 point into Elemental Exposure, which won't really do anything, just so we could get Endless Tempest, which gives us more duration on Hurricane. We talked about Hurricane before. The main draw of Hurricane here is Savage Hurricane, so that monsters will deal less damage. It does combo, like I said, with Waxing Gibbous, where you'll get high crit chance, which then procs with Masochistic a lot. The other really nice thing about this is because with Tempest Roar, this is considered a werewolf skill and we're using it in direwolf form, it then combos with our rampaging aspect. And this will essentially get you to max rampaging stacks very, very quickly when hitting AoE monsters because it has 100% crit chance from waxing. So you'll ramp up to 990 crit damage very, very quickly with this. So very important, but not necessary for the build. Like I said, I'll have a build before Tempest Roar, so don't worry about that. Down here, we have 1 point into Neurotoxin, and then we have 3 points into Toxic Claws. Honestly, you only need 1 point here, but I didn't really have anywhere else to put the points. Again, it feels kind of bad. Critical strikes with werewolf skills deal percent of base damage is poison. Being able to poison monsters is extremely important for a lot of druid builds. It activates a lot of damage multipliers and damage reduction. The first one being, you can see here, is Envenom. You can see I have it at 6 out of 3 because I have a +3 on my necklace for 60% additional critical strike damage. This is extremely good because we're getting tons of free critical strike damage from rampaging. This is really strong. I just want to make a quick call out to rabies. I didn't take this, as you can tell. I don't think it really does anything for the build. You're welcome to play with it if you want, but I really didn't enjoy it or like it in the build at all. So down here we have Grizzly Rage, which we transform into Direwolf with. We'll talk about that with the aspects and the upgrades. This makes us unstoppable while it's active. So our whole goal is try to get as high of uptime on Direwolf as we can. And then we have Supreme Grizzly Rage. This is where a lot of our Fortify will come from, combined with these two over here. Defensive Posture, so this increases the amount of fortifying we're getting from Supreme Grizzly Rage, and then also Nature's Resolve. Whenever you're struck, you have a chance to gain Fortify, and then Defensive Posture will buff this up, and you're constantly jumping in, and if monsters aren't dying, they're probably hitting you, so this will keep your Fortify up. Finally, we have Lupine Ferocity. Now, originally I thought this wasn't a very good capstone before I got to try it. Well, actually, this thing is pretty crazy for Shred. This, I thought it worked per like attack, it would give you 1 stack. From what I've seen, this works on every 6th werewolf skill hit critically strikes. So that means if you use something like Hurricane, every single hit of Hurricane counts as 1 tick. So you could be constantly proccing this on Hurricane. If your Shred hits multiple targets, you're getting multiple stacks. I'm actually really, really impressed with this capstone, and I've really been enjoying it. And it actually feels really good on bosses too, because you're able to kind of ramp up quickly with how much attack speed we're getting in the build, and then Hurricane gives you ticks too. Hurricane can eat the 6th tick technically, but yeah, it feels like you're generating so many procs with this that it feels really, really good, and I've really liked it. Moving on to the uniques and aspects in the build, my character has been adjusted slightly from my Stormwolf version, but it's still very, very close. So the helmet is the Tempest Roar helm. Again, this is not needed for the build. This is just something you can transition into later. I will have a build that shows without the helmet, so don't worry about that. But this feels really, really good for a lot of reasons. Gives you a chance to get a little bit of spirit from storm skills, which would be like Hurricane. But yeah, it lets us use the storm skills in werewolf form, and we really just don't have a lot of options for skills in werewolf form, and since we're in Direwolf. on the chest piece, we have damage reduction while shapeshifted into a werewolf. Personally, I look for a lot of damage reduction rolls. Damage reduction for enemies that are poisoned. Remember I said poisoning things is really important. Armor rolls, flat damage reduction while fortified, anything like that. Damage reduction rolls are pretty nice. On the gloves, we have shred ranks. I only have a 3 on this. You can get up to a 4 if you get a high enough one. This is all I had on me at the moment. Crit chance. You can see I'm stuck with storm skill cooldown reduction. It's okay for more hurricane uptime. Ideally though, that would be lucky hit chance and then attack speed. The lucky hit is for our calm before the storm, which we'll talk about a bit in our spirit boon to try to get our direwolf up more often. So on the pants, we have the most important aspect, disobedience. This gives you tons and tons of armor, which is going to help you survive a lot of things. And then you can see we have lots of damage reduction on here. You can put on temerity if you want. It is a decent option, but from what we've tested, I believe the tooltip's wrong and it's not actually maximum life, it's just a base life, and you're healing a lot with masochistic, right? So you can stack this up quite a bit, but it really didn't feel as good as just having a bunch of damage reduction or armor on pants. Damage reduction while injured, I also started really liking this stat in these masochistic builds. You can see that I'll show you real quick. I get up quite high with this to 74%. So basically if you're under 35%, you have 74% damage reduction, which feels pretty good. On my boots, willpower, damage reduction while injured, move speed, total armor. Again, we're pretty much focusing on a lot of defensives because we get so much damage throughout the build. But yeah, on the weapon, the waxing gibbous, this is the main draw of the build. Whenever you're getting this, what you want to look for is as high of eye level as possible, because that's going to determine the base damage on the weapon, which is really important. And then on the bottom, the special effect, you can see it rolls from 1 all the way up to 2.5. You would ideally want the highest item power with the highest duration. Now, if I had to choose one over the other, I would probably go for the higher item power, even if it had a lower duration. But that's a tough call. I would say probably focus on item power first and then duration second, but you want to try to get both of them as high as possible. On the necklace, right now, I actually have Direwolf, which gives us tons of move speed and spirit cost reduction. I don't think you actually need to do this. I think what would be better is if you take Stormclaw and you put this on your necklace. I think the biggest problem with Shred is the AoE clear. So I was messing with this and I realized I almost didn't even have spirit problems outside of Direwolf if I was hitting multiple monsters and getting a lot of procs. So I think if you're having spirit problems, you should put Direwolf on your necklace. And if not, you should put Stormclaw on your necklace. Now, we do lose a little bit of movement speed when taking this off, but if you want to stay at the movement speed cap, you can actually put movement speed on your amulet. On your amulet, you're looking for damage reduction rolls. This isn't like a great amulet, but most importantly on the amulet, the two things you want the most is ranks of the Envenom passive and cooldown reduction. Those are the top two stats you want. The other two stats, if you want to get more damage, you can totally do that. But yeah, down here we have Stormclaw band. On our rings, this is almost quite the ring I'm looking for. These stats are probably better, where life, lucky hit, crit chance, and vulnerable. You'll notice we kind of avoid a lot of crit damage in this build because of the way rampaging works, which is this aspect right here. Grizzly Rage duration is increased, and critical strikes with Grizzly Rage increase your critical strike damage by 10%. This goes all the way up to 99 stacks for 990 crit damage. So more crit, like additive crit damage, doesn't really add much to the build. We want multiplicative crit damage, which would be our Primal Shred and our Envenom passive. So those are really important. Offhand, because we're using a one-hander, I've actually kind of liked this one. Retaliation, we have quite a bit of Fortify constantly through Grizzly Rage and the passives we talked about. So this has felt really, really good. It only affects core skill damage though, so this does not work on like Stormclaw damage. But I think it technically still works because critical strikes with Shred deal % of the damage dealt. So in theory, increasing Shred damage or core skill damage should increase the damage of Stormclaw damage. So I've liked this one. There's a couple other options you can go for, but I've really enjoyed these. Having accelerating on the gloves is really nice for the speed as well. I don't know if I called that out. For other uniques, if you do get them on your chest piece, you can use Mad Wolf's Glee. A lot of people ask me about this. If you are noticing that you are plenty tanky enough and you don't take damage and you want to do more damage, Mad Wolf's Glee can totally go on your chest piece. On your boots, you can take I believe they're called like Penitent Greaves that chill. This works really well with this build too, because you're constantly teleporting on top of monsters and you'll apply the chill to them. So if you're looking for more damage, both those options are good. Next, taking a look at our spirit boons, we have wariness in the deer category. Damage reduction is quite good. We have Avian Wrath, which is multiplicative crit damage. Again, we just talked about that, right? We want multiplicative crit damage instead of additive, which is very, very good. We have Calamity, which extends the duration of our Grizzly Rage, so we can get a longer Direwolf. Then the last row, it's a little tricky. Calm Before the Storm. Nature magic skills have a chance to reduce cooldown of your ultimate skill. Unfortunately, Shred does not count as a nature damage skill. Hurricane does, and Storm Strike does, but it's a pretty low chance. It might be better to drop. I've still been kind of testing this. Maybe it's just better to completely drop this, but if you would drop this and you would take Overload, which is also a lucky hit chance. Dealing lightning damage has up to a 20% chance to cause a target to emit a static discharge, dealing lightning damage. The problem I have with this is it's kind of hard to scale this damage. We are getting crit, but I don't think Waxing Gibbous would count this as a werewolf skill, or even with Tempest Roar, so it probably wouldn't get the 100% crit chance. But if it does crit, we do have Rampaging. I don't know. I can't decide. I think this probably won't proc very much, maybe once or twice. So if you want a little bit more damage, a little bit more AoE, I'd say go Overload. Otherwise, if you want like a little bit of chance to get a little bit of cooldown reduction on Grizzly Rage, I'd say go Calm Before the Storm. But most importantly, we will always have Masochistic. It's extremely good. Again, if you have Tempest Roar, works with Hurricane, works on Shred. You're just constantly healing yourself up, and it's very, very good. For the gems in your gear, on the weapons, I actually like critical strike damage to vulnerable enemies. We're applying vulnerable with Exploit, and our whole idea is to kill monsters as quick as possible to keep up the buff. In our jewelry, we have skulls for armor, and in our armor, you can go with damage reduction while fortified. This is what I've liked the most. I know a lot of people also like the life percentage gems, especially comboing with Masochistic with percentage healing and things like that. That's up to you. I like damage reduction personally, though. Taking a look at the Paragon tree now, I've left extra points because it seems pretty tough to grind your way up and get high level or get your renown. So I didn't want to fill out the board completely, but I'll show you where you can put the points if you do get more than that. In the starter board, I like going up this way, and personally, I like starting with Exploit here. I think leveling this up to level 15 first on any druid build and using it on the starter board is very, very good. It's very easy to get the required dexterity points to get the bonus once you get leveled up. You can even do it before 15 as well, but with the dex over here. But I really, really like Exploit here. You can move it later to other boards with more dexterity, but this feels really good here. Going up in the board, next we have the Lust for Carnage board. The main draw here is the legendary node. Critical strikes with werewolf skills restore 2 spirit. You'll notice this gets really, really good once you do get the Waxing Gibbous, but it will still be good before you get the Waxing Gibbous. So you want to focus on crit chance still, and this will help with your spirit gain. In the middle, we have the werewolf glyph. This will give us damage reduction while in werewolf form, which is all the time, and then damage increase. You can see here we have some of the nodes. Around here will be where you'll put in the extra points that you have them. Werewolf skill damage here. And then over here we have werewolf skill damage and critical strike damage. This side of the board we have a little bit of attack speed. You'll work your way up in the board into the Ancestral Guidance board. We have Undaunted here because we're going to be fortified, so damage reduction while we're fortified, and then some damage increase as well. Couple bit of nodes here. We have core skill damage with lots of nodes here. We talked about increasing Shred's damage. Should increase the damage of Stormclaw as well. Pathing over here feels a little rough. I probably would wait to do this path until after you grab your glyphs. Glyphs seem much more important. But we get Spirit on Kill here, which again will help with our spirit generation. So if you are having spirit problems, you can come over here and get that. Then we have the Legendary Node, Ancestral Guidance. Now, this is a little hit or miss with Shred because we don't spend that much spirit, but I do feel the uptime on it is still good enough to warrant taking it. And if you ever aren't in Direwolf, you'll definitely be spending this spirit pretty consistently and be able to keep it up. So I still like this node, even though it probably doesn't have quite as close to 100% uptime, but it does still feel really good. Over here, I moved into the Inner Beast board. The glyph we have here is Territorial Damage Reduction against close enemies. You'll notice we have tons of damage reduction since we're a melee character. We want to be able to survive. And then increased damage to close targets because we're always on top of targets, right? And then you'll see pathing's a little awkward here, but it's mainly to get the dex for the bonus. We have armor over here. Armor is very good, so we grab a little bit of armor. And then down here we have shape-shifting skill damage. This just means anything that's considered a shape-shifting skill, which Shred is. So that's damage for shred. And then over here, we have some more attack speed nodes. Attack speed is going to feel really, really good with this build, I think. Down here, we have the heightened malice board. You can see we actually branch off over into the board here. You can do that early on if you're looking to get heightened malice. We have, while there are 3 or more poison enemies nearby, you deal 45% increased damage. The way we're poisoning enemies is with Toxic Claws on Shred. So that applies poisons whenever we crit. So we'll be able to get heightened malice. And then over here we have Fang and Claw Glyph. While in Werewolf or Werebear form, close enemies take 12% increased damage from you. So this feels pretty good. And then you can see the way we path through all the magic nodes will get us the bonus to all magic nodes within range. So that feels really good. That's going to be it for me. I hope you guys really like this build. I'm having a ton of fun farming with this build. It feels so fast and so clean when you finally get it online and running. I think you guys are really going to like it. If you have any comments, as usual, leave them down in the section below. Otherwise, till next time, I'll see you guys later.